Hey everyone, Jack here. First of all, we want to thank you all so much for listening. Next, we want to let you know that we have opened a Grain of Sanderson Patreon. We make this podcast as a hobby and as an excuse to spend time overanalyzing books with our friends. But between hosting fees and editing software, it does come with an expense of about $45 a month. The goal of this Patreon would be to break even, which will guarantee we'll be able to keep making episodes until we run out of books. Anything past that will help us buy books and equipment, and if we double our goal, we plan on exploring bonus content. Making this podcast has been incredible fun, and we're eternally grateful to all our wonderful listeners for tuning in. And if you want to support us in other ways, you can tell your friends, join our Discord, or leave a like on your podcasting platform of choice. That's all for now. Please enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to A Grain of Sanderson, a podcast where we are foolishly attempting to read all of Brandon Sanderson's work in publication order. I am joined by Taylor Lane.
Hello.
And Jack McLaughlan.
Hello.
And Jack, I'm going to start off the episode with an accusation right off the bat. Why did you make us read The Wheel of Time? Because I read everything from the end onwards for the last battle, and I'm like, we didn't need to.
I didn't want to set up this whole project and then give up on the premise of not actually reading everything. We said we were going to read it, and we read it. I do agree that we didn't need a full episode for Memory of Light.
Yeah.
For listeners at home, I think it was the Friday before the Sunday we were meant to record the Memory of Light episode. Taylor, Graham, and I were all at a party at Graham's place, and I was the only one to have finished the book. And the pain and
to be fair to Taylor and I, we had read more than half of it, both of us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You weren't not
like
reading
we were on our way to finishing it, and we would have been done by the time it was ready to be recorded.
But we were chatting about it all in person, and the amount of pain and dread expressed in having to finish it by that Sunday in time to do the recording. I was the asshole. I was the one insisting, like, we gotta, even if we skip the episode, we can't just skip it. We have to at least acknowledge it, right, in some way. And so this ended up being the compromise is we're going to briefly talk about A Memory of Light, perhaps a very brief retrospective just on the whole thing, like our general thoughts on Brandon Sanderson's Wheel of Time. But a big reason, and we'll kind of get into it, a big reason we felt like we didn't need a full episode is many of the points we would have been making would have been essentially points we've already made.
Sure.
In the previous episodes on Wheel of Time. Like, we weren't going to be saying a lot. None of us thought we were going to be saying a lot of very new stuff, like a lot of new analysis, other than just, I guess, talking about the events that happened.
Yeah, so we're going to do that now. And then we're going to dive into the Rithmatist afterwards. Usually I feel like we would put the one we don't like as much at the end, but we want to keep it chronological. We want to keep the chronologicality.
Yeah, the chronologicality.
A word. Correct. That is definitely a word.
The word that definitely exists.
Well, now I have to look it up and see if it is a word, if we're going to embarrass ourselves in front of our audience.
We'll leave a timestamp in the episode description if you just want to skip the
straight to the
Rithmatist part.
Which
Straight
I think we're going to have a fun conversation about the Rithmatist, so definitely skip forward to that if you're not interested in the Wheel of Time.
Apparently it's chronologicity.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah, it's right. It's chronologicality. Sure.
Anyway, so Memory of Light is the final book in the Wheel of Time. Brandon Sanderson wrote it, brought to the conclusion. The actual final battle happens for the entire last half of the book.
So for listeners, I use an app called Smart Audiobook Player, which I highly recommend if you have an Android device. And it allows you to speed up the book. And for something like Wheel of Time, I speed up quite a bit. And let me just go back to where the last battle is.
Oh.
I have the book sped up to 1.75 times speed, and it is still fully 8 hours of audiobook. It's what, like 400 or 500 pages still?
Well, okay, so what Brandon Sanderson did is that he made the midpoint of this book when Rand enters the chamber to fight the, bad guy, the one true power or whatever. What is his name? Oh my god.
The dark one?
The dark one.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So stupid. So yeah, so that's what his midpoint was, which I was also very surprised about because I was like, I don't know, I guess like for the pacing of a 13-book series or a 14-book series, I guess having your final battle begin halfway through the final book does make some sense, but it's just like I when we got to Rand entering the chamber, I was just dreading it because I was like, oh my god, he made this the midpoint, which means the whole last half of this entire book is gonna be this damn battle. And that's exactly what happened. I was right, and it did take up a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the final battle, there was a couple parts of it that like scratched an itch for me of just like, oh, that's a fun way to include magic in the fantasy elements in a magical war, a magical battle. I did find it kind of interesting that I can't remember their name. I think they even get a new one for the whole book, but the person who charms people, she was going around charming the battlefield commanders, and that was a whole subplot of, I think it was Matt realizing their commanders were getting charmed to make bad battlefield decisions, dealing with that. I found that kind of neat.
And if we're just going to go for positives off the bat, one thing that I will say is I think this book is probably the cleanest it feels of like, oh, this is the book that feels most like it was written by two people and feels most true to Jordan in a way, because like the action of the last battle feels pretty Sanderson-y in a lot of ways, because like there are certain beats where it's like they use a portal in a way that Robert Jordan would never have written. They use a portal in like a very hard magic Sanderson-y way to like transport ammunition like while it's in the air, and it's cool.
Oh yeah, like they set up a cannon in front of a portal and then portal the cannonball into the enemy lines. Yeah,
that was kind of fun, and I was like, that's something that's
cool as shit.
That's something Sanderson would write. Of course, that's something Sanderson would write. So all of the action feels very Sanderson-y, but then like all of the major plot points still feel like Jordan's, especially as we get to the end. For our Wheel of Time episodes, I read Origins of the Wheel of Time by Michael Livingstone, I believe. And he's a big Wheel of Time fan, and he's sort of doing some academic analysis about the sort of situation with the Wheel of Time. But the first third of that book is just sort of how Jordan lived and a little small biography of him, and then how Sanderson came to take over. And apparently, day before he died, he got like a second wind, and he spent the last several hours of his life where he was still conscious, making essentially an audiobook for his loved ones just so they could know how it ends. So like his wife bought a tape recorder and came back and just recorded like the last couple of hours of his life. And as far as I know, that has never been digitized or made public. This is apparently telling the story of the last battle and how everything goes out with Rand. You can really feel that because this feels, that comes with the caveat of like, this feels most like Jordan's for better and worse. Like he's so attached to his characters that, I mean, spoiler for the end of the book, he can't let Rand die, even though when it seems like the absolute thing that needs to happen.
I'm excited to talk about that. That's the ending, the specifics of the ending. That was the main reason I was insistent we still do something about it, because I wanted to talk about the ending with you. Before we do that, I just going off of your point, it was very similar to a little bit of how Good Omens felt. The book that was co-written, obviously it wasn't co-written like posthumously with one of the authors, co-written by Sir Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. Mm-hmm. And that is a book where, if you're familiar at all with both of those authors' writing, you can draw clear lines between the sections. This is a Gaiman section, this is a Pratchett section.
Yeah.
Or this is a Pratchett idea, this is a Gaiman idea. It's very apparent, partly because the two of them are very distinct and different just in the way they tell stories. Like in Good Omens, the plot beats, that's all about the workings of the world and the way the four horsemen fit into the like clockwork of the divine. That was so Gaiman. The scene about the prophet that could only see a very narrow sliver of exactly her life and walks up to her own execution because she's like, this is when it's supposed to happen. Go ahead and get on with it. That was a very Pratchett-like scene. You could very much split them up.
Yeah.
And it felt a little bit that way here.
And it's interesting because like there are these are not the only writing duos in the world, certainly not with, like, there are not many authors with what happened with Sanderson and Jordan. I think perhaps the only other one that I can think of is Frank Herbert's son, Brian Herbert. I don't like the Dune books that he's written, so it's an unusual combination. And it is also interesting to be able to do this so distinctly, because, like, the other one that I was thinking about is The Expanse. I don't know either Daniel Abram or Ty Frank's writing style individually well enough to make that distinction. So it feels much more cohesive, even though there are two different authors working on that series.
I mean, I think when you're making a book like that with another person, it is like a choice to decide if there's going to be clear seams or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can work to stop the seams basically from happening, revise each other's work and stuff like that. And if it's like very obvious, then that's like a choice that they made. That's interesting to know that Robert, that he had such guidance, because I feel like also his decision to make, because he thought that Robert Jordan thought it was only going to be one book left, and Sanderson, expanded it into 3. Reading the final battle, I kind of see some of the things that he needed to set up. I mean, like, we had a whole chapter on like this town that died and came back just a few paragraphs in the final battle where that happened. Like, there's a lot of things that set up that I was like, all right, like, I'm glad that you had fun. Like, I don't really feel like this needed to be 3 books, but I'm glad you had fun.
I mean, it's interesting to see, like, there's a ton of different payoffs of, like, there's shit that pays off from book 2 in this, where, like, Matt sounds the horn again, and, like, the heroes of the horn show up again.
Wait, was book 2 really the last time that horn was used?
Yes.
Oh my god.
They had it this whole fucking time? Anyway, never mind.
Well, no, I mean, like, it's not something they can continuously use. Like, they could only use it at the last battle for prophetic reasons. Like, they use it to defeat the Shan-Chan, who are now their allies, kind of, by the end of the last battle. You get to see the different heroes of the horn and stuff like that. I do like the scene where John Henry is one of the heroes of the horn in this book. I think that's cool. I mean, they don't call him John Henry, they call him Henge the Striker.
Things that I liked about this book, I would say I really loved Egwene's death scene. I think that was cool as fuck. When she was like, I'm gonna reverse the balefire weave, and then made like crystals grow everywhere and like killed everyone in like a nuke of like crystals. I was like, I don't know. I'm sure this is like some sort of callback to how balefire works. I don't know it enough, so I'm happy she's having a good time, but it was a really cool imagery. I really like that. Also, 6 months pregnant Egwene with twins fell off her horse so much. There's no way those twins survived. There's literally no way. She was falling off her horse like every chapter.
Neither did Egwene, so...
Egwene survived.
Wait.
No,
Egwene survived.
I thought...
No, Egwene died.
Yes.
Egwene?
The queen of Andor? Egwene.
Oh, I'm mixing up Egwene and Elaine, I think. Wait, who dies?
Egwene dies, Elaine lives, I think.
Okay.
Elaine
I mixed those up.
Okay.
Egwene's death, she was the Amerlin seat, and she had the crystal nuke death. That was really cool. Elaine, 6 months pregnant with twins, which is pretty much full term, like, looks full term. She fell off so many times. It's just like every time she fell off, I was like, what is this? Why are they letting her do anything right now?
Yeah.
So freaking crazy. But you know what? It's the bloody last battle. Like, take a shot every time they said it's the bloody last battle. Like, get out there.
One other random detail just about the battle before we get into the like ending, like how it actually ended with Rand, which is wild. One of my least favorite things happened with like large battles with Demon Dread, where we just kept coming back to Demon Dread, and like one hero goes to fight him, they die. Next hero goes to fight him, almost wins, they die. It was like the fight with Demon Dread was so repetitive and so like, we can't stop him. We keep sending a single guy with a sword at him, and it keeps failing. I don't know. Shoot him with a cannonball. Like, do something different, please. The strategy of sending your heroic swordsman forward for single combat keeps not working until it eventually works, but like it keeps not working.
Also, for some reason, this is consistent across Robert Jordan. The way that Davendred is defeated is, one, he picks up the Foxhead medallion, and then Lan lets him stab him, and then so like Lan gets stabbed in the chest and then like stabs Davendred back. It's worth knowing that like this is apparently a common and sacred technique in the world of the Wheel of Time, that like your like coolest move should be getting stabbed and then stabbing the other dude back. And this is like the climax of like I think 3 or 4 of the books.
Oh.
Like, is this
my
maneuver. Rand pulls it off before. I don't know.
Is that why he has that like evil like scar on his side that never heals?
No. I think that's something else.
That's something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Sounds good.
There's 14 of these fucking books. Okay. Oh, actually, hold on. Thank you, Wheel of Time wiki. There's a whole page for sheathing the sword technique, which is Lanel Morgan Manjorgan first taught this concept to Randolph Thor as he was leaving Feldara. Rand sees this when Ignar Shanoa defended a narrow alley to the death so that Rand and his companions could escape. Later in the battle over Falm, Rand realizes he is fighting Ishmael to a stalemate, and he uses the same technique, and then, yeah. So, at least 3 times.
So, the next time I do Hema and I get a double with someone where you both hit each other at the same time, I'll say I'm actually just doing a sacred, mystical technique and that I actually won.
Well, okay, Lan does this heroic sacrifice, and then the Aes Sedai get to him fast enough that he doesn't actually die for it.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't even get to die. Like,
I think it's very notable that most of our favorite characters make it through.
mm-hmm.
They're like, what, 4 or 5 people that we care about actually die in the last battle, and most of them are women, and it's just sort of like, all right. I don't love that.
Perrin 100% was supposed to die. That guy spent the whole time running on fumes. He was supposed to collapse at the end.
I would have been more okay with him
fuck?
surviving if Rand died, because that seems like a classic, like the true king that is the king meant for wartime dies, leaving behind the king meant for peacetime. Which is a direction I could have seen Perrin going.
I mean, another one of the interesting things is this one is where we're getting into grayer area about what was going to happen with the Wheel of Time, but there were supposed to be more books after the last battle. And there were supposed to be Matt and his wife going to Shan-Chan and, like, seeing books in that perspective and, like, eradicating slavery from the Shan-Chan Empire and stuff like that. Now, what I think probably would have happened is Robert Jordan, had he kept living, would have, like, found a way to do that before the last battle. But regardless, there is supposed to be arcs for Perrin and Matt afterwards, which is weird because I think it's implied that Perrin like just goes home. It is like Lord of the Two Rivers, which like I really do wish we got something like the Scouring of the Shire or the ending of Return of the King, because I think the thing that is like most wonderful to me about the adaptation of the Lord of the Rings that Peter Jackson did is I love just the beat that we have to sit in where all of them are at the Green Dragon Inn, they're all home in the Shire, and you can tell that all our hobbits are uncomfortable because they're like, oh, like we return and no one understands us. Like, no one knows what we've been through. So, like, we're gonna drink together and just sort of sit in this moment. And, like, I love that moment. There's no dialogue. You can just read it on all their faces. And there's a relatively similar scene in the book. The fact that there really is no epilogue to this. I mean, there's an epilogue where we get to see Rand light a pipe using magic he shouldn't be able to do anymore, which is kind of cool.
I was just gonna say, why don't I jump into just talking through the basic ending for Rand, because I think this is the craziest part of the book and the main reason I still want to talk about Memory of Light. So what happens to Rand at the end, which I say the end, which is, the last half of this book after he goes into the portal. So he's there to fight the Dark One, and so he's like, he's outside the pattern, outside the universe, sort of. He's dealing with the Dark One. His name's not Moradin. What's the name of the guy? What is it? It's not Moradin, right? It's
something like that.
No, the guy who comes in is Moradin.
Oh,
but
it is Moradin.
He doesn't come in until like 75% of the way through the book, I believe. Like, it's just him and the Dark One for a little while, and then Moradin comes in like later.
But Rand's in there. He's fighting the Dark One. Eventually, he's fighting Moradin too. And while fighting the Dark One, Rand keeps getting hit with visions of, like, you know, all the different ways he could lose, all this stuff. But he also sees visions of what the world looks like without the Dark One, which is a world without freedom, without choice, it kind of is a bad world too. And Rand essentially realizes that the Dark One is essentially a necessary part of the pattern. Like, it is evil, it is bad, but it can't not exist. It's a necessary component of how the world works, because, like, for there to be good, there must be evil, things like that. He fights Moradin a little bit. They do some trickery to kill him and trap him using the Excalibur sword of the story. Rand does a whole uniting the Sayadin and Sayadar and the True Power to create a perfect prison for the Dark One. After the old broken prison was gotten rid of, make a new perfect prison for the Dark One. And then the battle ends, the final battle's over, and Rand presumably dies of his wounds after the battle. And then at the big end of the story, where everyone's at the huge funeral, end of the thing, everyone except Min, Elaine, and Avienda look really, really, like, sad and mourning. It's all like, why are they not mourning? And it's because Moradin's over there watching from a distance and then rides out into the distance. And Rand's 3 sister wives, which we didn't even really talk about that part from the beginning of the book. Rand's 3 sister wives are like, they know that that's actually Rand in Moradin's body, leaving out into the world to now just be a normal guy and not be like the king of everything anymore. He rides off, unable to feel either side of the power. It's the retire. He got to retire. But he's in someone else's body. He's in, like, the super evil man's body.
God, that's my least favorite trope, is like, I am a heroic character who just desperately wants to retire. Don't get me wrong, there are moments where it can be earned, or, like, I think it is an interesting and good arc for a character, they just want to be able to rest. For me, like, my favorite version of this is always, there's still work to be done. Aragorn's whole arc is like, I must take responsibility and be a good king. I can't just sit around and be a hapless fuckwit and just hang out and smoke weed with the hobbits, which is what he was doing for like 60 years before he shows up in Lord of the Rings. I don't know. It's a sour note to leave on. It's also just an insane thing to do.
I also don't like the whole, like,
So
Min,
insane.
Elaine, and Avienda, which, once again, we haven't gone to the sister wife part, but them just being like, we're going to let him leave and be alone, and I guess broke up with them, and they're just like, chill with that. I don't know.
No,
aren't they
in the
in
end,
love?
he was like... No, in the end, he was, like, looking back at the 3 of them, and he was like, I wonder which of them will follow me.
Oh,
like,
right.
Maybe they'll all eventually follow me, like, to where I'm going. Or maybe they won't. And I was like, King, there was literally some sort of fucking prophecy that Avienda was going to have your quadruplets. I think they're following you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, and real quick on the whole sister wife things. In this book, the 3 of them basically come to I think it was sort of the last book, sort of this book. I don't really remember. They're all blending together. But they essentially...
They all blend together like crazy.
All 3 of them essentially come to an agreement where they're like, we're in this together. We're all his wife. And then they come up with a plan where they take turns of who's going to go sleep with him tonight. And, like, send him. Like, there's a scene where Avienda shows up at his tent.
I think that was this book.
Avienda shows up at his tent and is like, the others agreed, it's my turn. And they just...
Y'all should have better systems for this. Also, like, just, like, get comfortable with some queerness, ladies. Just, honestly...
Yeah.
Don't take turns. Whatever.
That's too far. That's too far.
Yeah. Anyway,
Sister wives,
that's
okay. Polyamory, way too far.
Yeah. That's actually it. That's fully it. But that's the end of Wheel of Time. I don't think we plan to spend a ton more time on it. Once again, most of our real analysis, our real thoughts on the various
I'm
elements
sorry,
on Robert
folks.
Jordan.
We're going to be talking about it next month because we have to read a bunch of Wheel of Time short stories.
God damn it. Anyway.
Are the short stories after the last battle, I'm assuming?
I have no idea. Oh, one other thing that I just want to talk about is...
Sophie will be here.
Yeah, Sophie will be here. I'm sorry we're doing this to you, Sophie. In fact, we may ask Sophie not to, because I mean, it would be funny. One of the other things is Grendel, the evil witch woman, dies in this book, and then Sanderson has gone on to confirm that she's not dead. And that this was another faked death, one of 27 faked deaths of hers. I am wondering if that will show up in one of the short stories that we're reading, but otherwise, I have no idea. I mean, the only other thing that I want to say about the ending is I do genuinely quite like the scene of Rand lighting the pipe. And it's completely unexplained, which I think is the strength of it. Mm-hmm. People have theories, and the Wheel of Time wiki specifically says that Rand can manipulate the pattern directly now, despite the fact that he can't use the true power or the one power anymore or anything like that. Fuck all that. I don't care what the theories are. I don't care what the explanation are, because in the text, we have no idea what happens. Just one of our characters has died, and all of a sudden he can light his pipe in a way that he shouldn't be able to. And it's just sort of a moment of mystery that we close on, of there's always something else to know, and the fact that we're not given it, in this final way, the world is unknowable, I think is a really good and kind of, restrained beat for this series to end on. And it's worth noting this is a scene that was written by Jordan. This is pen to page that survived.
That's interesting, because my follow-up to that, one of the criticisms / neutral discussion points we've talked about with Brandon Sanderson, a lot of his writing, is the whole pickle jar analogy, is the whole Brandon does not let anything go unexplained. Mm-hmm. Everything eventually has an explanation. Even things we don't know about the Cosmere, we trust, and also usually comes through words of Brandon, that we will get an explanation, at least some idea of how everything works. And I was going to say that whole ending on that note of mystery felt sort of anti-Sanderson, and I was going to say I kind of hope, I wonder how much, if we kind of keep our eye out for that, if we're going to see him actually do that. Where are the places Brandon Sanderson decides, no, let's leave a little bit of mystery? Because I think he does it a little bit, but not a lot.
I mean, I think the closest that something of his leaning into like that, I think it would be the note from Sazed at the end of Hero of Ages. Spoilers. If you just clicked on this episode and were like, oh, I don't want to hear Cosmere spoilers. Is at the end of Hero of Ages, Sazed leaves a note where he sort of is I don't really have access to the afterlife, but I think they are happy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the closest we've seen Sanderson do.
I think that's a hard line. I don't know if I've heard him say anything directly, but I think the whole where souls go when they die is a hard line of not going to be explained, not going to be, it's outside the power of the gods of the Cosmere or whatever. And I hope it stays that way.
Me too. I mean, I fucking hate when characters don't stay dead, and I say this as someone who reads a ton of superhero comics. And
which is, considering how inspired Brandon Sanderson, well, I guess inspired by superhero stuff we've seen Brandon Sanderson, well, I guess he does.
No, we can't. I know what you're about to talk about. We can't talk about it.
Okay.
All right.
Well, folks, we did it. We finished, kind of. Asterisk, the Wheel of Time. Well, we're going to be reading some short stories next month. So exciting.
And if you want deeper analysis, find another podcast. There are chapter by chapter reread podcasts of the Wheel of Time, and I'm sure they cover what you were looking for.
I was going to say, if you want deeper analysis of Wheel of Time from us, our previous 2 episodes on it, we go into a lot of discussion about the role of women in the stories, the magic, how that works, the writing style, Robert Jordan himself. We spent a lot of time talking about all that stuff, and it would have just been repetitive if we did a full episode for Wheel of Time. We would have been saying a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
But
all right. Let's move on to the Rithmatist.
The Rithmatist! Welcome if you skipped past.
That's that's the timestamp
We're
right
so
there.
excited to see you. Thanks for
Welcome
joining
back.
us.
Wait, that's a very, positive way to start for the Rithmatist. Did you both like this book?
I did. I mean,
It was aight.
Okay, yeah, I'm more in
I don't think it was perfect. I definitely have criticisms, but I had fun.
I feel like, to me, I just miss digging into, full-length novels. I thought the short stories episodes, I was like, oh, it's a nice break. You don't have to go so deep. But now I'm, realizing, okay, enough short stories. Let's actually do some novel-length analysis. So that's what I'm excited for.
I think generally my impression was positive in the sense it worked in the sense that I had fun reading it, even as we have plenty of things to say about it. I just read it and I wasn't bored. I was enjoying myself. Even if what I was enjoying was kind of picking up things and being like, that's a little weird. But yeah, it was for Taylor and I, it was both our vacation reads.
Yes.
I read that book in Ireland, and Taylor read it on beaches.
Yeah, I would say
I read it on my couch.
I would say in general, I think that at least my experience was definitely colored by the fact that I was reading this for the podcast. I feel like maybe if I had picked this up on my own from the premise, I might have had a slightly more positive experience, but I didn't really know what the premise was, and I was just reading it, because it was the next book that we were coming to, and so I feel like to me that might have changed and made my experience be yeah, it was fine. I don't really think it was great or that good, but it was fine.
It was a passable middle grade book. It was just yeah.
Well, actually, let's go ahead and do our one-sentence summaries in terms of the middle grade book, because I have a point about that.
Okay.
I don't think it's not middle grade, it's YA, but whatever.
I was actually going to say I think it is solidly middle grade, but Jack, go ahead.
My one sentence is the one where Sokka is the expert in bending and also solves a murder mystery.
Yeah. Yeah, God, I mean, it is really I was thinking about what Kirk said of we need a Xander or a Sokka for that stays a Xander or a Sokka, and we do in this.
I was petrified the whole book, the entire book. I was talking to my girlfriend about this while we were reading through. I think I've said her name on the pod. I don't know why I'm being obscure. I was talking to Maddie about this while I was reading it, and the entire time I was just it's gonna happen. He's gonna get powers. I'm approaching the midpoint of the book. I can't wait to see how I'm sorry. It's not I can't wait. I'm dreading how he's going to get powers somehow. And Maddie kept asking me while I was reading it. She was like, did he get powers yet? Has he become a wizard yet? And by the end, not a wizard.
No.
Never gets powers.
He's
Asterix.
Asterisk. Yep, there's an asterisk. But
there is an asterisk, but there's no sequel yet that can ruin this. Taylor, what's yours?
Mine is Alcatraz, but without the fart jokes and with Warbreaker's magic system. That's my pitch.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Our main character is Bastille, and the side character is Alcatraz. We mixed it up with the genders.
Oh!
Where Bastille is the one. I read Joel and I was like, this is literally just Bastille. Because Bastille, she's obsessed with the lenses, but isn't actually a lens
I didn't
person.
make that connection.
And so I was
She's not an
like,
oculator.
Joel is literally just Bastille.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the gender swap works as well as with Bastille and Alcatraz. But we can talk about that later.
That's a really interesting point. My one sentence summary is not a single person in this book sounds their age. Which is why I think
so true.
Which is why
So
I think
true.
it's solidly middle grade, because while our protagonist is 16, he sounds at the most 13.
I was going to say, I kept forgetting he was 16.
And
while
35.
Yes, and he also sounds like a 35-year-old man who is Brandon Sanderson at times. The other thing that I think is really funny is our main villain. What's his name? Nalazar. Nalazar is our. I guess he's our secondary villain. He has some real Snape energy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Not to bring up the
exactly.
Cursed series, but like
We are going to be talking about it a lot.
we're going to unfortunately have to talk about Harry Potter because this is very wizard school. And unfortunately, when you write a wizard school book, you now have to deal with the biggest wizard school book as well. This character is very Snape coded in a lot of ways, of like this evil teacher. And I kept like the book keeps reminding you of how young he is, and it's like we are older than this character because he's only 24.
Oh, I didn't realize.
They say that multiple times. He's only 24, and like that is not how he's written. This man is written like he's comfortably 40.
Wait, didn't he spend 10 years on the front line of Nebraska?
No, there's no way.
Well, I thought wasn't
I
that
don't
a
think he
thing?
spent 10 years.
I thought there was a whole thing
He
where
was
he
like
spent
a
like
war
a decade
hero.
on the front.
He was
Yeah,
a war
I don't
hero
think
in
that-
Nebraska, but I don't think the amount of time he spent there has been specified. We do know
Okay,
that
I
he's
think-
the youngest person ever to become a professor of Rithmatics, and we know that he is the youngest person to get tenure because a cool scene at the beginning of the book is involved with that. But
Yeah, we'll get into that.
What happens is all Rithmatists have to serve 10 years on Nebraska, which is this war that's perpetually happening. But since I guess he went to the front lines when he was 18, he got discharged early, and that's why I guess he's 24. And that's probably why he's the youngest one, because he should have
Right.
served until he was 28, right?
And we'll get
This
into
book
the
has
summary,
some
him being
internal
discharged.
inconsistencies as well. So
I don't know
it's
what you're talking
also
about.
hard to say like what's going on, because it seems like Sanderson sometimes didn't think things all the way through.
Which is actually pretty uncharacteristic of Sanderson to have not thought everything through.
well, I think we'll have an explanation for this when we talk a little bit about the AU fantastical world history, but I think something that's worth drawing attention to right up front before we get into our summary is in the first draft of this book, it was a Cosmere book. And then
Checks out.
Sanderson finished writing it and then went, actually, I don't think this should be a Cosmere book. I'm going to lean more into this alternate universe Earth, which is why I think a lot of that is left unexplored and just sort of implied, because that's stuff that got cut and reworked for the second draft.
I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll have a quote for that
Yeah.
before when we get there, but
Yeah.
The magic system is very Cosmere.
yes.
Yeah.
Do we want to jump into the summary before we keep going?
Sure. Okay. So this, as most summaries are, is pretty focused on storyline A, because there's a lot of this book that is not focused on storyline A, is what I'll say. So we will fill in the holes later, is what I'm saying.
I would say a solid almost 2/3 of this book is not much happening before like the murder mystery plot really kicks into gear in like the last third of
Right.
the book.
The Rithmatist is a YA non-Cosmere gearpunk novel that is set in a world where some people called Rithmatists can draw on a surface with chalk and have their lines come to life. The setting is in the United Isles, which is an alternate America where the 50 states are actually 60 different islands. This book takes place in Jamestown on would-be Virginia at a Rithmatist school called Artemis Academy. Joel is a boy obsessed with Rithmatics, but is not a Rithmatist. Son of a janitor and a late chalk maker at the academy, Joel's complete focus on Rithmatics makes him so uninterested in anything else that he has trouble passing classes. Also, due to his humble upbringing, he has trouble making friends at school in a school full of children of the rich and powerful. Joel will do anything to learn more about Rithmatics. With a serious gamble on his future, Joel lands a position as Professor Fitch's research assistant. Also assigned to Fitch, a Rithmatist girl named Melody who needs remedial summer help. While Fitch helps Melody with her chalk drawing, Fitch and Joel begin to work on solving the strange disappearances happening to Rithmatic students around campus. Together, they are working with a man named Inspector Harding to track down the scribbler. Looking at the Rithmatic lines from the crime scenes, Joel and Fitch can't get a clear idea of what some of the new lines mean. When a third boy goes missing, the son of a night senator, they head down to East Carolina to investigate the scene for themselves. They find new Rithmatic lines that no one has seen before and see how brutal a Rithmatic fight the boy had before he was kidnapped. Joel continues to do research to help Fitch, all while slowly becoming closer to Melody, who, similarly to Joel, has trouble making friends. Joel helps Melody with her Rithmatics, they go out for ice cream, and they keep each other company while doing administrative tasks. Near the conclusion of the book, Joel hears scratching outside his window. He goes outside to find one of the new arithmetic lines and knows he's the next person on the scribbler's hit list. Joel runs for his life from the scribbled, formless creatures who want to eat his flesh. Using his quick wits, he outsmarts the attacking Rithmatist, a shadowed figure with a boiler hat and a cane, and makes his way back to the main office, where a friendly, close to Joel office worker named Exton helps Joel get away and find help. The next day, Exton is arrested for the kidnappings, for his association with wearing bowler hats, and some damning evidence found in his desk. Joel doesn't think this is right. The next day, Joel goes to the Chamber of Inception, the chamber that all 8-year-olds in this world go into to see if they are chosen as a Rithmatist. Joel sees a strange figure in the chamber, but ultimately is not a Rithmatist when he exits the chamber. Late on campus, a few nights later, Joel notices with Melody that the police outside the Rithmatist dorms are unconscious. They charge in, confronting the scribbler, and finding Professor Nalazar, this book's red herring, already fighting against the man. The scribbler knocks Nalazar unconscious and goes for Joel and Melody. In the process, Joel watches the scribbler attack some arithmetic students. The scribbles force themselves down the student's throat and turn that student into one of the scribbles. Joel realizes Inspector Harding is the scribbler. Professor Fitch joins the fight, keeping at bay the crazy, animated, flesh-eating scribbles. Joel throws acid on Harding, neutralizing the evil chalk that had taken over him, which turned all of his blob scribbles back into the humans they actually were. The day is saved. But something still isn't right with Joel. He confronts Professor Nalazar, who all but admits that he was the one who was secretly puppeting Harding the whole time, but Joel feels like he can't tell anyone his conclusions because they already believed Joel when he said that Nalazar was a good person. In the final scene, Melody, as Professor Fitch's only arithmetic student, is forced to compete in the Melee, a friendly arithmetic competition that is meant to showcase the best students in the year. Joel rushes forward before the competition starts, deciding he will draw the lines and she will trace them. Together, they beat out the other Rithmatist students and win the competition.
Which was a fun scene.
It was a fun scene. It was a little out of place, but
yeah,
it's okay. I thought it was a weird place to end your murder mystery, but okay.
It was a little bit of a second climax. Yeah.
This book has a wild tone shift.
Yeah, I don't... Yeah. There's so much here.
What's fascinating is that there's so much here, but again, so much of this happens in the last act.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Fully for the listener, I would like you to know that, like, fully the last half, or maybe 2/3 of what Taylor read is just the last act.
Yes.
Just the last 100-ish pages.
I jumped over pretty much all of part 2.
Nothing happens in part 2. The book starts very strong because we get this scene where, well, actually, no, it doesn't start strong. It starts off with Joel info dumping about the magic system to, like, a kind of shitty dude that he's friends with. Then he info dumps about the magic system to this guy who's uninterested, and we, the readers, are uninterested, and then, or at least I was. And then we move on to a scene where Joel is sitting in on a arithmetic lecture that he's not supposed to be in, but, like, the professor's kind of chill, so he's fine with that. And in walks Professor Nalazar in a gray coat. He's hot, young, and handsome, and he's starts drawing on chalk on the floor. And Fitch, this professor, is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I must have gone over my class time. I didn't hear the bell." And Professor Nalazar is like, "No, this is a challenge. This is a duel." Fitch, like, immediately starts panicking, loses the duel. But, like, it's very cool that Professor Tenureship is decided by Yu-Gi-Oh! Duels.
It's funny because there's a lot of characters who then make comments about how this is a very archaic tradition. This makes no sense. This is stupid, because Professor Fitch, the one who gets replaced, is objectively a better professor, but a terrible duelist. And so,
well, actually, no, he's quite a good duelist. Like, one of the things that I really like about the fight is, like, they make it clear in that fight he is clearly the better Rithmatist, because he does, like, one drawing, and his chalkling is, like, worth 10 of fake Snape's chalklings. But, like, he's just terrible under pressure. Well,
that's why he's a bad duelist, because dueling is under pressure. He's a great Rithmatist, a bad duelist.
Yes.
But it's funny, a lot of characters talk about how, like, even the principal of the school, or the president of the school, is like, this is kind of stupid that it works this way. But it's because in this society, the point of being a Rithmatist is to be a warrior. And so it's all about combat competency. And so all this stuff is built around dueling and all that stuff. Dueling's a huge, huge part of being a Rithmatist.
Yeah.
No, but I Taylor, you talked a lot about the way you put it when you're reading the summary is that there's a lot of just hanging out and fun banter and like research and stuff. And just to get as much of the Harry Potter comparisons out the door at the beginning so we can move on, that's another kind of comparison to Harry Potter. I think that was a big thing throughout those Magic School books is you'd have plot, and then a few chapters of just, and now they're just hanging out at school, and now they're just doing this and hanging out and spending time. And I think that pacing was the thing that made it feel the most like those books, made it feel the most Harry Potter. And it's clear that Brandon Sanderson had this comparison in mind when he was, well, of course he did, reading this, because I found a quote from his FAQ where like people were asking, how did you come up with the story? And Brandon Sanderson's quote on like how he pitched this to himself was the story of a muggle at Hogwarts. So even Sanderson in writing this was essentially saying, I'm going to do a Harry Potter-esque story.
Yeah.
And there's so much throughout the
guess.
book that there's so much throughout the book that I was reading and I was just like, this is Harry Potter. The evil professor that the main character knows is evil, but is still just going to be a professor at the school for the next few years.
Yeah.
I think that, like, to me, unfortunately, I think that the characterization is so weak in this book that,
yeah,
not to compliment, J.K. Rowling ever, none of, like you said, no one acts their age. They all are just really poorly, like, fleshed out characters. I think Joel's fleshed out, Melody's kind of fleshed out, Fitch is fleshed out, and then everyone else is just like this caricature of like of not very like well thought out characterization.
I think that we actually should talk about the fact that, like, the characterization in Harry Potter is very good. I mean, obviously, fuck J.K. Rowling. She's a terrible piece of shit. But I think part of the reason that this was hurtful to so many people is, like, I think Rowling is genuinely quite good at character writing, and
yeah,
there's a reason that Hogwarts is so appealing to people, and that, like, many people who are much too old to who are much older than the target audience of Harry Potter are, like, still huge fans of it, and, like, there's the reason that fucking theme park makes a bunch of money. It's like a world that people want to hang out in. For the successes of the Rithmatist, I think the murder mystery is good. It never hits anything like that. I mean, like,
no.
Our lead characters are not as interesting. The world is not as interesting. Well, actually, the implied world, like, I think, is really interesting, but
we'll get into that. I have a lot to say about the
J.K. Rowling
Earth stuff.
Writes people who happen to be in high school, whereas Sanderson's clearly writing a YA book. Like, he's like, this is for a younger audience. Let me treat my audience like they're younger. Where I feel like what's so appealing about Harry Potter is that, like, it doesn't really treat its audience like you're meant to be the same age as, like, the characters, I guess. Like, I think it treats its audience with more maturity than Sanderson seems. I think he's just so he seems very, to me, caught up in this idea of, like, writing for young people, like, needs to be this different way that I write things, and it's like,
which, like, as a kid, I always found so frustrating, because, like, there's nothing more galling than being treated like you're a child, especially when you happen to be one.
You're right.
And, like, for, like, all the failures of that series, because I think basically everything beyond book 4 is bad, but, like, I still really like those first 3 Harry Potter books, which is a shame, because J.K. Rowling is a piece of shit. I would like to go back to those books, but, like, I don't feel comfortable doing that anymore, for obvious reasons.
Graham, you made the point of people wanting to live in Hogwarts, and in you making that point made me realize I barely know what the academy in this world is like.
Oh my God.
I don't know. Is it... I essentially was just imagining UVA the whole time.
I mean, that would honestly be not a bad comparison.
Because it's Jamestown, and it's a university, but there's nothing special about the university. It's a bunch of old buildings.
And it's not a university. That's one of the things.
Oh, right. It's a high school. Oh, that's right. It's like a high school. It's like a boarding high school.
God, I really wish that all of our characters were a little bit older and this was a college-aged book. I think that would solve a lot of my problems with it. And not all of them, because there's still some, like, pacing issues. But I do think that, like, there is a better version of this book where it's a arithmetic university. I don't know. Maybe I'm just old. Because I did start this book and I was like, fuck, we're in a wizard school book. I wish they were older. I hate this.
And the school itself is just bland. It's just a campus. There's nothing about it that makes you say, I want to live here. That seems like a really engaging, cool place.
I was disappointed by the characterization. I thought that people talked really strangely and didn't act like people. Like, there was like this point where Nalazar was basically just like bullying Fitch across the table, and I was like, genuinely no adult has ever talked like this before in their entire life. Like, I don't know what we're doing here. Can you just rewrite this scene to be like adults talking to each other? Because that's what's happening in this scene, but it's like 4-year-olds are like yelling at each other like, you're not as good as my Rithmatics is, you're so bad. And then all the teachers were like, oh, Fitch is bad, instead of being like, dude, stop being weird. Go like
calm down.
Like, no, it was like no adults were there. It was so weird. Anyways, the second thing I thought was really poor about this book was scene setup. I think he did a spectacularly poor job of explaining where the fuck we were, what the fuck anything looked like. Almost came to the conclusion that he was like wanting to overly rely on his illustrator to help him talk about what things are supposed to look like, because he really didn't dedicate any time to like fleshing out what anything looked like. We got and there was like these few lines that were like really good, and I got really excited. Like, there was like a line where they were just walking out, and like he was like, Melody's skirt swished below her, and I was like, can we just do some more of that so I can get integrated into the scene? Because it feels like there's just a lot of, imagine a campus, no more details other than that. Like, imagine this building, no more details other than that. What does this campus layout like? What do you, to me it was more Virginia Tech, because it was like a Rithmatic side and a non-Rithmatic side. So I was like, oh, it's like the like classroom side, non-classroom side.
I think it's also worth noting for our audience that we may be overly critical or harsh on particularly the Virginia-ness of this, because it sounds...
Oh, that's true.
We are, all three of us are lifelong Virginians, although I was born in Maryland. Don't let the Virginians know, they'll kill me. All of us were like raised in Virginia near the Washington, D.C. area. So like we kind of have like a deep familiarity with...
We all went to Jamestown on field trips, like school field trips.
We all went to Jamestown on field trips. We have sort of a familiarity with like a very East Coast sensibility. Many of our friends went to not the oldest universities in America, but among them. Just sort of these institutions that we're all familiar with. So like the fact that there's sort of an implied institution here that is leaning into that sort of thing. We are, of course, going to read the University of Virginia, Virginia Tech, William and Mary, these sort of institutions that are old money Virginia, in a way that I think the book is trying to invite. It reads like it's something written by someone who has read about this kind of institution in a book but never attended one. Which is weird, because Sanderson went to BYU, which is a similarly old, although very different kind of institution. Go ahead, Taylor.
And all of us had real big question marks when Melody said that she could go home for the weekend to Florida. As a Virginian, I have concerns.
It's technically
that
possible,
doesn't
I
make
guess.
any sense. What are you talking about?
I guess we don't know how fast those like spring trains go.
We do.
Right?
Because it takes...
Maybe they're really fucking fast.
They're not really fast, because it takes them 2 hours. They're going from Jamestown, which for those of you who don't know anything about the United States or Virginia, because I'm now thinking about it, it's like...
So true. So true.
Virginia, in the southeastern corner of Virginia, is Jamestown. That is where the first English colonists land. And so that's where they're making sort of the center of things. It's also worth knowing there's not really an indigenous history of America in this
I'm going to be talking about
universe.
That. Yeah.
Jamestown is just sort of prestigious for question mark reasons. And then the Carolinas are just below it. And at one point we take a train to East Carolina, which I think is just the Carolinas. And it takes 2 hours. And that's probably accurate to what like a real life train would be. So they're not magically fast. Granted, there's no high-speed rail route or anything in the real world for that area either.
Well, okay, so the other thing too is that like he's playing on the fact that in our world it's North Carolina and South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Us going to East Carolina, like Jamestown is pretty close to North Carolina, so I don't know. And there's also like a body of water between them because he made them all islands, so it's like we don't really know. But just based on all that, it does seem like Florida is probably an 8 to 10 hour train ride minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not super weekend trip.
Is Ben McSweeney? Wait, I've seen that name a lot. Is Ben McSweeney like an official illustrator for Brandon Sanderson?
He's worked with him before.
On Coppermine, there's a map of the United Isles, and I'm just not sure how official it is.
Oh wait, you guys didn't? Okay, so what? How did you guys read this book?
Kindle. Oh, there is a map. Oh, awesome.
Did you not
there wasn't
have
a map in the?
Wait, did you not have any illustrations?
I had lots of
That was-
illustrations.
Oh, okay.
I had all the illustrations that were like the rhythmatic lines and stuff between chapters.
I know on
I never got a
Kindle
map,
sometimes they skip you straight to page 1. You might have had to scroll back
Oh,
to
maybe.
find the map. They do that on my Kindle. It pisses me off.
Ben McSweeney is an official illustrator. He did the covers for the graphic audio versions of Mistborn, which have like fucking sick ass covers.
Nice.
And he also did all the Ellendale newspapers. We've talked about him before, actually, because I remember we complimented his drawing of whatever Kelsier's teacher is.
Oh, Grendel.
No, not Grendel.
Grendel!
Oh, Grammel. It was like Grammel or something, right? Something
It's
weird
a
like that.
it's a G name, but
Yeah.
Gemmel?
I think that's
Right.
closer. 11th metal. I'm just gonna look it up.
Matt, real quick, this map would be kind of fun to. It would be kind of fun to dig into why he named the islands what they did, because a lot of
Yeah,
them
they're
are just
Gemmel,
like the
yeah.
states. There's like Texas. There's the Californian archipelago. A lot of them are similar. Which once again, we're going to get into it. The fact that there was no Native Americans to find when they got over here. Interesting where these names came from. But
that is
but,
actually
like,
really interesting.
yeah. Like why?
There's
why
an
is this
island
place
called Sioux.
And there's like the native Central and South Americans.
Okay,
Those people are still exist in this world.
let's actually just get into this point. Is there anything else we want to talk about on sort of like what we were talking about in sort of Old Money Virginia? Taylor, I feel like we interrupted a point you had before we talk about.
On the geography stuff?
No, we were talking just before. The
Oh,
show.
no, my point was basically, that I felt like this book really needed a lot more scene description and that it overly relied on, I think, the illustrations in some areas like Ben Sweeney's illustrations, like the literal pictures on the page.
Which are good,
to,
for the record.
They're good, but I felt like we could have maybe spent a little bit more time actually grounding us in this campus and what it looks like.
Yeah.
And what was going on. And also because a lot of the scenes, like an important part of the scenes was how far it took to run to different locations. And so I felt like if we had maybe spent a little bit more of Act 1 grounding ourselves in where everything was in comparison to others, the Act 3 might have been a little bit smoother.
And like, again, not to keep drawing the Harry Potter comparison, but like I'm trying to, like, because at this point it has been well over a decade since I've touched any of those books, because like I can tell you the last time I read it, I was working a dishwasher job in end of 2016 into 2017, and
That sounds right.
I listened to the audiobook, and then she starts like posting shitty turfy things on Twitter starting in 2018. But so it's been almost 10 years since I've read them, but like the stuff that I remember particularly about those first 3 books, like I remember just hanging out in these common areas rather than like the beat by beat plot points. Like everyone, I mean, there's a reason that the theme park that Harry Potter is set in is the castle and also Hogsmeade, because those are the like exciting places where it's just like you get to see people hanging. And there's no like, where do the students congregate? Like we don't really get that.
Kind of
Yeah.
vaguely in a yard, like
Yeah.
in a quad, I guess.
He hangs out with like school administrators, and like I understand that he's friendless, but it's like you gotta give him at least one.
Yeah, but even when he became friends with Melody, it was still like
They don't go
mediocre.
places. Yeah. Anyway,
They
go
went
to
to
the
an ice cream
shop. Yeah.
They went to an ice cream parlor once. but it didn't mean anything. Like, I don't know.
There's such an opportunity there that I think is underutilized because, again, all of us live very close to Washington, D.C., which is like a wonderful city. I can't talk about it right now because it'll make me too fucking angry about what's happening there right now. But, like, it's a wonderful city, and it's also, like, a tourist trap. And there's a ton of, like, touristy things. The Smithsonian is a wonderful institution we have a ton of wonderful free museums. Unfortunately, a big part of DC culture is there are tons of people who live in DC or who are raised around DC who don't take advantage of it. I would love to see some element of that culture within this, because I think that's like a really good bit of characterization. If Melody and Joel got to bond over, like, we're both from this town, which they're not, but they're like, God, I fucking hate tourists. Or maybe the reverse, where Joel is like, oh, like, I'm making friends with Melody. I'm so excited that I have an opportunity to be a tourist in my own town. That's the thing. I don't do touristy things in DC unless someone's come to visit, and I get to go, oh, let's go check out the Postal Museum. Their collection of stamps rule, which is a real thing. All of you listening should go see the Postal Museum in DC. They have great stamps.
That's so true. We were going to go into another point, but that kind of segues into my point, which is, like, I actually don't think Joel doesn't have friends because he's the poor guy. I actually think Joel doesn't have friends because he's a bad person. I don't think he's a very good friend.
I'm down for that. I'm on your side. I am fully on your side.
Yeah.
I think there's a scene where he's like, oh, can I be invited to your beach house? And the guy's like, no, not really. And he was like, and then the guy was like, I'm sorry, Joel, like, and then Joel's like, ugh. I was like, dude, you need to, like... And that, like, that, first of all, was... I'm not making a point here. I'm not being coherent here. But that, first of all, was not a very good interaction on Joel's behalf, because it seemed like this guy needed to, like, overburden the conversation and, like, make Joel feel better, when he should have just been like, no hard feelings, I guess. But the worst part was when this other friend of his came and was like, I actually was invited to the beach house, and Joel completely needed to be like, Joel couldn't be happy for this guy. Like, if that was your friend, and, like, because this was also, like, a business opportunity for him, like, these
networking,
he's like networking, basically, like, he got this networking opportunity, and Joel was just like sad. And I was like, if I had a friend who couldn't be happy for me, I'm not keeping that friend. Like, Joel's just not a good friend.
Also, there's a part of the book where he gets directly called out by Fitch, where Professor Fitch, the adult in his life, calls Joel, hey, you're an insufferable bully. Because
to Melody,
because it was one of those things where it's like, as soon as Joel gets a little bit of power and acclaim, he immediately flips around to kind of being a bully to Melody about it. And I actually kind of like that scene where Fitch, that was the most, like, oh yeah, he does feel a little bit like a angry teenager, where Fitch immediately turns around and tells him, hey, that was horrible. Like, that was, you do not keep that habit. Like, break that habit now.
Yeah, and then, like, But then, in my opinion, I think he continues to be, like, a mediocre friend to Melody. Like, I don't really, I don't think that he's, like, very good to Melody still, until, like, the very final scene when he's like, I'm gonna stick my neck out for her and go into this battle. But that was also for, like, kind of his own acclaim. I don't think he's a very good friend, and I think that's why he doesn't have friends. That's my thesis.
All right, so we want to jump into the AU stuff?
Yes. I'm really excited to talk about this because at first it was my favorite thing about the book. And then as it went on, I got more and more like, wait, what the fuck is going on, in both a good and very bad way about it.
Okay, so why don't we just start by listing some things we know about the AU?
Yeah, so real quick, the way it does the world building, I actually really liked. There's no point in the book where Sanderson just outright tells you, here's what's different. There's just little snippets that come in where people are talking, talking in the way as if they're expecting everyone listening, audience included, to know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I actually like that. Like, you get little bits of like, wait, this is weird.
Some things we know. Colonization has not happened in the same way. We know that America and Europe used to have tensions, but Fantasy Korea attacked and conquered and colonized Europe. So there's a lot of European refugees in America.
Including the King of England at the time, King George?
I don't think he's ever described as the King of England specifically. I think he's just...
Oh, just the monarch.
He's just a monarch of Europe, but he's never specifically said England. We know that Scotland still exists, and that there is a...
He was the King of Britannia. That's why the island they're on is New Britannia. So,
Thank you.
He was the King of England.
And he comes over to America and becomes both a religious figure and discovers, although I'm sure there's a lot of asterisks to that in the true history or whatever, discovers Rithmatics.
Also, there's like colonization didn't happen because the Aztec Empire also had ships that they were fighting the Europeans with.
And it's worth knowing that is a not uncommon maneuver in sort of fantasy AUs. I know that the Temeraire series, Naomi Novik's Napoleonic Wars with Dragons series, does a very similar maneuver where colonization of America didn't happen in the same way because the indigenous people of America have dragons about it.
So to put it all together real quick, over back in quote unquote old world, there's the Joseon, I'm probably mispronouncing that, the Joseon Empire, which is Korea banded together with Mongolia, conquered that whole world, including Europe, which is now a colony, and is basically, there's this great scene, which I found like a really fun scene, where Joel's describing a meal he's having, which is stir-fried spaghetti with a tomato-based soy sauce and like a bunch of different vegetables. He loves Italian food, and I love that. And I'm telling you, I have my grocery list right now is those ingredients, and that's what I'm making for lunch for myself today. I'm going to try and make that.
When I got to that point, I was like, good joke.
That's honestly a great bit of world building, and I wish there was more of that.
There's a little bit of there's European professor. It's Europe, but if it was a colony of a Korean empire. And all the little bits of that I found really fun. There's, of course, the United Isles, the United States and North America, rather than being a single continent, is this massive archipelago. And when the British showed up,
actually, before we get to that, one other thing that I want to bring up about Europe is we do have two different European characters. We have one, a European professor who's a professor of history. It's worth knowing that he is an Asian man. He's a professor of European history, meaning he specializes in knowledge of the conquests of Europe by his people. Other thing that's worth knowing is
Professor Kim.
Yes, Professor Kim. It's also worth noting that we have a Scottish character whose name is escaping me because she comes up in two scenes.
One scene.
It might even just be the one scene. But this Scottish character talks to Joel and is like, "Oh, hey, we have an opportunity to go back to Scotland. Our visa was approved."
Oh.
And you basically, to return to the homeland as a refugee, you have to apply for a visa. That is a wild thing that does not get a lot of exposition or expounding within the text, but I thought was something really worth bringing up.
Yeah. The next part of world building, which we learn a little later into the book, and this is where I started having to have a lot of thoughts about it, was we learn a little bit about how the European settling of America played out in this alternate history. And there's two big parts of that. For one, we don't have all the details, but it seems something along the lines of Central and South America are one big empire called Aztecia or something. What I wrote it down somewhere. Aztlanteans. The reason they're this big, united, and powerful enough empire to basically rebuke the colonization attempts by, the various European groups before Europe itself became a colony was because this South American empire has been dealing with and fighting the wild chalklings, which are the natural magic that's the danger in this world. It's what's going on at Nebraska, which we haven't really explained yet, but we'll probably get to. It's these wild chalk monsters that go around, and there's clearly some other weird magic shit going on there. And it's also described that North America is completely barren of human settlement, with a strong implication in theories that it's because of those wild chalklings. There were probably indigenous groups and societies here. I think it mentions that there's like a few random individuals that were found, but any kind of sense of North American indigenous society, including like towns and signs of occupation, were wiped out by the wild chalklings long before Europeans arrived. So when Europeans settled the Americas, it actually was an empty, unoccupied territory, which was really interesting because the moment I get to this part, and I'm not an expert in history, obviously, I've, basic historical education, very politically left-leaning, and that, modulates my thoughts on it. It was very interesting because then I just kept thinking the whole time, how do you have America? This America looks a lot like actual America, like the names, the way people act, the cultural, this stuff. How do you have the United States of America without the conquest and genocide of the indigenous Americans? Like, there's so much of like that history that directly created America, and then now this is the version of America where it actually was a big empty landscape with no native people to displace or fight or help them survive at all. Graham, you made the comment about Jamestown. Like, why? Like, part of the reason Jamestown is significant and important is because of the indigenous part of that history and their involvement in it. And if there was no indigenous people, and also, looking at the map of the American Isles, immediately what comes to mind, like just three I see right away. There's, like Taylor mentioned, there's an island called Sioux, there's Milwaukee, there's Dakota, there's Nebraska.
Yeah.
All of these names that are, we only have those names from indigenous people. Those aren't English names. So it just became really interesting where I was like, that just feels, it feels like a weird, insensitive misstep in world building or missed opportunity, or almost like an attempt to sanitize American history while then also completely minimizing and removing a very important part of it.
Yeah, it's also worth noting that it's just not true either, in terms of like, there is no place in the world that is uninhabited because of the fauna. Everywhere in the world that has dangerous fauna has always had people in it. The only places that are in the world that are genuinely, truly uninhabited are places that are so unbelievably harsh to live in environmentally. Antarctica has always been largely uninhabited just because it is too fucking hard a place to live. You need a really, really intense system to have people down there.
Well,
to give a little, we are talking about magical monsters that humanity only recently in history developed the tools to like stop at all. Like, a non-Rithmatist has no tools except buckets of special acid to fight against.
I also think
like
that, to me, the end of this book, the implication, all of those Native Americans are chalklings in Nebraska.
Yeah, which is the other thing that
bit.
I don't love.
It's a lot of like you said earlier with the whole unified Aztec South American empire, that being a pretty common alternate history trope of essentially the indigenous people were able to prevent colonization. I feel like the what was done to North American indigenous people in this alternative history was sort of I can see it as the author being, I don't want to have the genocide of Native Americans in my book. Here's a clean way to not do that. But then ultimately that still ends up being a very so you just...
Then why are there indigenous American names?
Genocided them you just genocided them earlier in history by magical means, and also then just removed an entire people from... You basically went into this alternate history and said, oh, here's the alternate history of all these other cultures, but the indigenous Americans don't get a place in this alternate universe history. They don't exist here.
Yeah.
Which didn't feel good when we got to that part. Like, I was a little curious reading this, like, where's the indigenous people? And then we got to where we got the explanation, and I didn't like it at all. Also,
there was a part where the politics they were talking about, they said the United Isles are all independent, which I was like, okay, oxymoron, love that. And I was like, low-key, they live in a confederacy. Like that's like a confederacy. And I think that's funny that he like made a confederacy and like didn't know that he couldn't call it that, or like he didn't call it that. Like combined with this.
Yeah, the other thing that's brought up is like one of the people at the academy knows is like the nephew of a president and has like several presidents in his families. So, and like at first I'm like, oh shit, they're president of America, so this school is a big deal. And then it's like you get the idea that all these are independent, and it's like, oh wait, no, he means like a governor, which like, all right.
Oh,
also the senators.
Knight senators.
The senators are knight senators with no explanation.
That I'm okay with. Yeah.
I actually do like that. I thought that was fun. Like knight senators. Ooh, what does that mean?
And we never really get an explanation. And you know what? That's fine.
Other than they're important. Other than they're like one of the kidnapped / presumed dead / turned into a chalkling children was the son of a knight senator, and that was like a huge turning point in essentially the politics of what was going on. Was that a knight senator's son got hit by this. The whole alternate universe history, and then, you know, going on to explain a little more about what's going on for anyone that didn't read this book, the Central Island, Nebraska, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's also another indigenous originating name.
Let's look it up.
Nebraska. But there's Nebraska in the center, and somewhere in Nebraska is something called the Tower, which we get basically no explanation on what actually is going on there, except vague allusions that there's all these crazy magical stuff going on. A lot of this is because our main character is not a Rithmatist, and a lot of the knowledge about what's going on Nebraska is Rithmatist only knowledge. But essentially all of the Rithmatists are maintaining a giant chalk circle all around the Tower of Nebraska, which is keeping in all of the wild chalklings and monsters. Chalklings, which are just, you know, chalk drawings of little monsters that run around and can like eat you, like climb up you two-dimensionally and start chewing on you and breaching your skin and killing you. And then there's a lot of implication of there being other weird magical monsters, such as the Forgotten, which only people who have actually been to Nebraska know anything about, and they refuse to tell Joel. So we don't know.
It's worth knowing that Nebraska is an Anglicization of a Shire, which is a Siouan language word spoken by people in Missouri, Iowa, and the Great Lakes region.
Siouan / Oceti-Sacoan. Wait, is it Oceti? Am I saying that right? I knew it once. Yeah, Oceti-Sacoan.
Yes.
Which for reference is the proper name is for the people commonly known as the Sioux.
Duly noted. It means flat water. Which, you know, honestly is a good description of the area.
But yeah, I found all the descriptions we got of Nebraska kind of fun. Like the fact that they have to maintain this massive chalk circle, and so they have all these tents set up to keep the rain off, and storms are like the most dangerous event because parts of the chalk circle get breached, and that's like a whole thing. I found that a lot of fun. I found that like kind of cool and interesting, and if there's ever a sequel, I'm excited to eventually go to Nebraska and see what's going on at the War for the Tower. And that's the whole point of Rithmatist. You're trained to go spend 10 years maintaining the circle at Nebraska to keep all the wild chalklings in.
That was another point of world building that I thought was poorly executed. I think that I wish that he had done a little bit of research on what a military school is like, because this was, pretty much just like Hogwarts or like any school you'd go to. And I was like, if you're training these kids for war, I feel like their curriculum is probably supposed to be a little bit different than like, just do whatever you want.
Wasn't that sort of Nalazar's point? Wasn't that sort of what Nalazar was pushing for?
That's what Nalazar was pushing for, but I do think that there is, I don't know, there's worth something looking at something there of like, an institution like Virginia Tech, for example, I think is probably a good example of this, of like a school that started as a military school and then went on to become a normal college. And it does sort of like, but you can still sort of feel parts of Virginia Tech that it's like, oh, this started as a military school. You can see that.
That's my experience. And so when I was disappointed was like, I was around and knew people who were going to go off to be in the military, and their education and their livelihoods were very different to mine. And I felt there is a reason.
Yeah, like, absolutely.
The state needs to put you in that. There needs to be some sort of teaching that happens before you go there in a different way than other students because they're being prepped for something different.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereas, like...
a comparison that I think is good is Ender's Game, where we spend a ton of time at a military institution, where, like, we don't really focus on the actual school learning at all, and we just focus on the war games in that book. I think sort of the thesis of, like, let's take these kids to military school is, how do you convince a kid to fight in a war? You convince them they can do nothing else. That's the only thing they'll ever be good at. And I think that's sort of what's missing from this.
Absolutely. And I think that what's also deeply missing from this, he brings up the media. There's literally a journalist that comes by. If you are a country that needs people to volunteer for a war, your country looks very different than just, we are like just hanging out and having a good time. Your journalism looks very different. Your like propaganda looks extremely different. And that was so missing from this book. The journalists were very against Rithmatists, which should totally be outlawed because, or like, there should definitely be some censorship there because if they literally need Rithmatists to fight this war, let's propaganda the shit out of like our citizens to make sure that they are really nice to Rithmatists so we make sure that we can continue this damn war or we all die. The fact that there was a whole plot point about anti-Rithmatist things going on that originated in the media, I was shocked by. I was
There'd
like,
be
that is
so much jingoism, like raw, like Rithmatist, kick-ass kind of.
Absolutely. Like, that was totally missing. And I felt like totally made absolutely no sense to the world that he had created because normal people, like, the general consensus was that, like these Rithmatists are, like, spoiled brats. And I felt like that made no sense. Where's the propaganda? Like, where is,
These child soldiers are spoiled brats because they get a pension after their 10-year tour.
Right? Like, I live in a world where the American military exists. Mm-hmm. Like, what is going on? Sanderson, you live in a world where the American military exists. Well, there you have so much to pull off of. What are you doing?
I don't think I thought about it, but no, you're absolutely correct.
If the average person actually genuinely thinks the way that the average person in this book thinks, that there's no way that war would be ever sustainable. The state needed to do better.
This war is an existential threat, and there are magical monsters that want to kill people, and if they get out, they kill and eat people.
Yes.
And it's a huge thing. Like, this war is actually hey, if this fails, and the whole plot was, because like at the end, the whole thing was, and we'll probably get into this more, but there's a finite number of Rithmatists that can exist at a time. Like, a new Rithmatist can't be made unless a previous one dies. And so the whole villainous plot of, Nalazar, who is possessed by some creature from Nebraska. That's the reveal at the end.
Or is one of those creatures from Nebraska?
It's something along those lines. Possessed by is, and that's the same thing with Inspector Harding. Inspector Harding was...
We know Harding was possessed, but Nalazar implies that he's something different. So I think he might be some sort of hybrid.
But their whole plan is, instead of killing Rithmatists, they're going to the school where they're being trained. One, turn public opinion against Rithmatists. That's part of their plan, I guess. Which, once again, doesn't, like, for all the reasons Taylor said, doesn't make a lot of sense. And two is, they're capturing and transforming the students into chalklings, presumably in the way it's implied probably happened to Indigenous Americans, because that's not technically being dead. And so new Rithmatists can't be made, so they actually just permanently reduce the number of Rithmatists in the world by doing that. Which I thought was a kind of neat plot point. And then there's a whole thing where, like, Nalazar as a creature is studying, like, there's a whole subplot with him checking out books and Joel, like, tracking that, like, what books he's checking out and why. And it turns out the reason is because he's trying to understand how much humans know about Rithmatics as, like, a scouting thing. And there's also a subplot where his plan B is to train a bunch of Rithmatists, the best Rithmatist students, to be expert duelists and make them really good at dueling, but also really loyal to him, which, I mean, I wonder how that plan's going to work out long term.
Wait, my impression that I got was that he was studying human Rithmatics because he wanted to blend in with humans. Like, he was like, I want to know how much they know so that I don't go crazy overboard because I know everything. Yeah.
Maybe.
That was what I thought was happening. Because he knew two different new Rithmatic lines. So he knows probably way more.
Oh yeah. And in very Sandersonian fashion, the magic only works if you know you're doing it. That's such a classic Sanderson thing.
Very
all of his magic and real makes me believe this book was going to be part of the Cosmere. But it's a thing where like there's a whole plot where Joel's dad discovers a new line, but because he doesn't know what it does, he can't make it work. And that's like a super important part of Rithmatics. And I guess it is weird when you think about it, like there's this whole magic system in society built around it. And how many lines do they know? Like
4.
3? 4? 4. 4 Rithmatic lines.
Also, like, let's take an opportunity to talk about the magic system. It doesn't matter at all. Like literally every time it's described, apart from like this new Rithmatic line, this is the least a magic system has mattered in Sanderson for understanding how it worked. At the end and beginning of every chapter, you get a Rithmatic diagram. I skipped every single one of those because I just knew that the book would, like, if there was something relevant, it would explain it. Oh, although I do think the mood of these are kind of fun. Like just the idea of basically you do Yu-Gi-Oh battles with chalk and like how good your drawing are what, and that's all you need to know. And there are 4 lines, but like every Sanderson magic system, there are some secrets things, and those get explained.
This is where I'm actually going to disagree with you a little bit. I thought the little descriptions of all the different defenses were so much fun, in the same way the spaghetti scene was fun. It was just little dips into this whole world. It was just fun. Like it wasn't.
If you wanted to know more.
No, the lines are, I'll just go through them really quickly. There's the line of warding, which is just a circle. Mm-hmm. And the more perfect the circle is, the stronger it is. Like the more exact of a circle it is. There's lines of forbiddance. And the line of warding, it keeps chalklings out. Like chalklings can't pass it. They have to dig through it and like destroy it. Line of forbiddance. Similar to a line of warding where it prevents chalklings out, but it also creates a physical, real wall of force. And so when drawing your stuff, you have to be careful because you'll draw a line of forbiddance and then you yourself cannot cross over that line to draw anything on the other side. So you're putting up walls. There's lines of making, which is just the general term for, that's just a general term for you draw a little creature and it becomes alive and goes and attacks and you give it commands. What's the 4th one?
Vigor,
yes, which is just a laser beam. Shoots across the ground and blows up chalklings and other chalk. And then the 2 new ones that are discovered, I don't know if they're given proper names, but line of silencing. It's a weird line that just deadens sound within an area. And I think it's like, it has some weird mechanics, but it deadens sound in an area. And then there's I can't remember what, they gave it a name, but there's like a strong... Or rebuking or something like that. Basically a much stronger line of vigor that can actually affect people, like hit, because normal lines of vigor only hits other chalk. Mm-hmm. But this more powerful line of vigor can actually hit people and knock them back. And I think it's just a straightforwardly more powerful line of vigor.
Okay, forgive me if I'm misremembering, because at this point I can't remember it all. Why do the chalklings that are attacking people last longer and obey more complex commands? Is that explained?
Because it's not explained directly. I assume it's because they're actually people turned into chalklings.
Oh, sure. Okay.
But that's one of the secrets is normally chalklings are pretty simple, have very low intelligence. All that stuff. There's something weird going on where Melody's are a little better because she's just so good at chalklings that she has more intuitive control and hers are smarter and can do more. But most of the time, chalklings are very simple instructions. Wait, go forward, attack, whatever. But wild chalklings, which are the threat, like the thing in Nebraska, they act more like they have like wild animal intelligence. They can think more, do more. And it's a big mystery why they are that way. Why are wild chalklings so much smarter? I think it's because they're all people.
Yeah.
They're all people, and that would make them smarter.
Okay, that does make sense to me. There's also the implication that, like, the more detailed you draw a chalkling, like, the stronger it is. Okay. Taylor, you were going to say something.
Well, it was also revealed that, like, okay, so how you control a chalkling is, like, you give it little commands in chalk underneath of it, and it'll follow those simple commands. And Melody just, like, doesn't do that. She just, like, gives her little unicorns little whispers of what she wants it to do. And so it'll do, like, pretty complex things for her because she's just, like, whispering to it instead of giving it, like, these simple instructions that are like, go forward, go, like, 45 degrees, attack this line when you see it. So like that's also why her things are like, and so there's like some sort of mystery going on there where like Chalklings are smarter than people give them credit for.
That felt very Spren to me. The like scene where she was talking to them, where I was like, I don't like. Again, you can really feel the DNA of like, oh, this was supposed to be a Cosmere.
Yeah, to me, it felt like that first scene in Warbreaker where he tells the little straw guy that he had just put a breath into to go get the keys.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it felt like to me. So that's why I said this was very Warbreaker.
Yeah.
Because I felt like the Chalklings were like the breath.
I really like the scene where Joel is just not understanding Chalklings, because Joel is really good at the lines of warding, forbiddance, and the kind of mathematics of it. Because there's some semi-complicated geometry, which is like, if you're better at geometry, you can make stronger lines of forbiddance and warding and etc., knowing where all the points of binding are, etc., etc. But then it's very mathematical and scientific and exact. And then lines of Chalklings they're stronger the more detailed there are. And Joel comes in and kind of asks what I think is kind of a funny question. It's like, okay, but everything else is so mathematical and exact. More detailed on what metric? According to who? What's the science behind why it's more detailed? If it's according to your perception, does that mean a less imaginative person needs to put in less detail to make it stronger? And I just thought that was kind of fun, like Joel just freaking out and refusing to accept it, while Melody, the person who is meant to be the less smart person about Rithmatics and understand, be worse at it, she's just like, just works, man. I'm just good at it. I just know I draw really pretty unicorns and they're stronger than all the blob Chalklings. And I just thought that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that is a good detail. And it is sort of, it's funny to have the Sanderson fan given a voice here, because like we have in our notes that Joel talks like Sanderson at certain points, but I also think that Joel is really interesting as a Sanderson fan, because he doesn't just talk like Sanderson, he talks like the dudes who come up to Sanderson at conventions and are like, all right, so if someone was a Mistborn in the cognitive realm, what would that do?
Things like that.
Yeah, if someone is like, all right, so an Elantrian shows up in Mistborn and uses this rune on someone who's burning steel, what happens? Like, that's the kind of dude that Joel is.
Yeah.
So, like, it's fun to have that kind of voice in it, and I wish that was more of his character in general. Although, like, I'm glad there isn't too much of it, because I'm sure in excess it would become obnoxious. It's funny to see that worked into it, and I'm sure that's something he's doing intentionally. But maybe not. But it's a sort of fun character trait for him to have, apart from, I am a dude who sucks.
Yeah. We talked a lot about the magic system. There's a second magic system, magic in quotation marks, happening underneath the surface with Sanderson in his acknowledgments calls this a gearpunk novel.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So there's a lot of gearpunk, if someone wants to explain what that is, because I've not really encountered that.
It doesn't really come up.
So while steampunk is like, what if you took steam technology, like old classic Victorian steam engines, and made them like instead of developing like new better technology, you just made steam power stuff more complicated and stronger and better. This is like if I can't remember exactly where I saw this, one of his FAQs or acknowledgments says this, but it's essentially, what if instead of advancing past Da Vinci, we just made Da Vinci better and better and better and better? And there's some random acknowledgement where like they make clockwork horses at some point.
Yeah.
And there's it's a blink and you miss it line where someone mentions some gear artisan using the right gears to capture the winds of magic or something along that, like the ethereal winds to power thing, and it's just thrown out there and moved past, never explained, whatever. There's some magic that's accessed through gears, and I think it's going to end up being the same magic, because there's a whole thing with clocks and Chalklings being scared of that, and Joel having a clock that like represents like 3 of the different classic lines of warding. And I'm like, oh, okay, so gear magic is going to end up working on the same principles, because it's all circles and ratios and geometry and all that stuff. It's all going to be one in the same magic system, because that's what Sanderson loves doing. There's 3 magic systems, but it's actually one.
Yeah.
Yes. I was like, there's going to be a third one too.
Yeah.
He loves putting things in 3s.
I'm really sort of interested in... I really wonder what a Cosmere version of this would look like. I think that had he sort of stuck with it, it might be stronger. I'm not sure. Interesting and weird as this alternate universe America is, there's really not much done with it, ultimately.
Right.
With a significant, but not so significant that you couldn't do it, rewrite, or just not rewriting it in the first place, this could be a Cosmere book.
Maybe it couldn't be in the Cosmere because it has democracy.
There we go.
That's
all
the reason.
Cosmere needs to be monarchy.
Yeah.
Sorry. But you could easily be monarchy.
Yeah, I'm not fully convinced I agree with you, Graham. Well, it's weird because I found the alternate... Oh, you know what it is? I don't read a lot of alternate history books, so for me it was a novel experience reading an alternate history fantasy book. So I'm sure to someone who reads a lot more of that media, it's something that it probably is not that great. But I, at first, was having a lot of fun picking together like, oh, wait, so this is different than the way I understand the world. But then what does that, and then that leading to questions where I'm like, wait, if that happened, then how could this have happened? So what happened there? And at first it was a lot of fun. We've talked about the spaghetti scene. I thought that kind of thing's really fun. As it went on, it became a little less and less interesting. I started to glaze over those dips a little bit. Like there's one point where they mentioned that the master gear makers are all from Egyptia. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
Sure.
And then there's the whole thing with the indigenous Americans, which did kind of take me out of it a little bit.
This is a perfectly fine alternate history in terms of those regards. But I do think that where this book's strengths lie are also where sort of some of the strengths of the Cosmere lie, and I sort of want that. And like, you know, I am by no means an expert in alternate history. I have read a few, but like of an alternate history, Strange and Norrell, read that one, Jack. What other points do we want to bring up?
So I've got a point.
Oh, the women?
The women question mark.
Yeah.
In our little list of topics, there's just women question mark, and I'm
so
what the fuck? A little bit.
he's okay. So not only is this alternate America, he's kind of playing around with it being like World War I era America is like the vibe I was catching. I was like a little bit with the whole war going on.
It is early 20th century, I think.
And with the gear stuff, I don't know. I think he got excited about Alloy of Law and then was like, let's do it again. And like, ooh.
I know that it's early 20th century because there is a character who says it's the 20th century as if that is a new development. It's the age of progress.
This map says 1908.
Okay, yeah. So, there you go.
Again, it's an alternate history, so who knows what 1908 means to them.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we've got there's so many comments that are like, a woman can't be a journalist. Like, they were so scandalized when a woman got hired as an office person. And I was really confused because I was like, your student body has a lot of girls. What do you mean women don't have jobs? Why are you educating them then? I'm so confused. Where is
because they need more child soldiers.
I was so confused where we were. Like, where were we in like the suffragist movement? Because it was like so like set dressing to the point where it was distracting.
If you are a nation that requires child soldiers, if you're going to do misogyny, at least make the misogyny relevant and folded into that world, because you would not be sending women as child soldiers, probably. You would be saying, women, you need to go get pregnant and have more children so we can send them to the child soldier mines.
I guess it depends on like how much control does this religion actually have over who gets chosen as Rithmatist, because if it's actually just random, then it's like, even if they're misogynistic, they have to deal with the fact that 50% of their magical warriors they need are women.
Yeah.
You could maybe spin that as a reason women's rights are a little funky, is like, it's because half of them are this super special cast of people. But
if half of them are this super special cast of people, why is there misogyny at all? Like, if power is so democratic,
it doesn't make any sense,
as determined by the magic system.
Yeah, and I guess it's not even democratic, and we'll get into like it's not.
But
truly
do you
random,
see?
But yeah.
Do you see what I'm trying to say though? Like,
yeah,
if we are so shocked that these women are becoming career women, why is it so normal for Joel to walk down the street and see one of his girl like peers? Because that is not what was happening in 1908.
And certainly not in this class of people either.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I thought it would have made sense to me if, like, the only education offered to women was, like, a Rithmatist education because of the magic system. But that was just, Sanderson, you could have just not done this weird plot point and your story would have been exactly the same. Yeah. Why did you do this? What's going on?
We're already alt universe. You don't have to explain it. You can just be like, women's suffrage is way more advanced than it was at this time in actual history.
Because at the end of the day, to me, it kind of seemed like the only reason he included the fact that there are women in careers as a new thing is so that he could exclude them from the plot. Like, low-key, that's the only, like, that, to me, that's what it seemed like happened. He was like, I don't want to put them in there, so they're not police officers or, like, people who work in important job positions because I don't want them in my book. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and I know that's not who Sanderson is, so I'm, like, confused why we went in that direction.
This is similar to what we talked about in Alloy of Law, where there was a lot of misogyny that I felt like was almost an attempt at fulfilling the genre. Like, not that that's a appropriate way to or a necessity thing of a genre, but there's a lot of misogyny that felt like it was there just because it was part of the genre or Brandon Sanderson's conception of the genre. And maybe that was something similar where it's like, I'm writing a book set in 1908 America, and part of that genre of book is this particular place in American history with regards to, like, women's suffrage and rights. I don't know, maybe.
It's so weird, though, because it's so inconsistent. It's so strange.
Yeah.
In the 20th century, even relatively late into the 20th century, like, for example, fabulously upper crust people. Let me use Princess Diana. I know she's not an American, but as an example, her education was basically finishing school. You went to school and you were taught how to be a nanny. You had the skills of, you had some, like, formal education skills, but it was mostly like, here's how to cook and clean and dance. These things that make you have good table manners as an upper crust aristocrat. Diana was, in her 30s when she died, and she died in the 90s, so she's late 60s and 70s in terms of her education. So this is much later on. So to Taylor's point of, like, why the education should either reflect that or it shouldn't be here at all.
You know what? I have a theory. The reason we get this weirdness is the same reason for our complaints about Brandon Sanderson over explaining everything. Brandon Sanderson is not someone who can let something go unexplained. So what I think it is so pretty common thing, something I do, and I know a lot of my friends do and other people do, when writing fantasy, and especially in doing things like running D&D, where you're running a game. And what happens a lot when I'm running D&D is I kind of just don't want misogyny or homophobia to be things in my setting. And I know there's a certain type of world builder or pedant about world builder that's like, oh, but it makes sense for there to be some racism or homophobia or, like, different forms of bigotry in the settings. And my response to that is, awesome, not in mine. I just don't want to play with that. Like, I just don't want it to be a thing. And I don't feel the need to explain why it doesn't exist. But Brandon Sanderson might be the type of person that needs to explain it. So it might be this thing where he wants a more sanitized version of his world where things like those extreme bigotry are not as big a problem or not even there at all, but he can't just say it doesn't exist. He has to explain it. It has to be addressed. It has to be woven in with mechanics and like some kind of weird alternate history, and then he just doesn't do it very well, and that's what leads to a lot of this awkwardness, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Yeah.
I just wish it wasn't there.
I think the story would be exactly the same. Well, because of, like, this setup that he had, that there was, like, a lot of misogyny, I thought that Melody's character was interesting at first because I thought that she felt like she had no friends or was excluded from opportunities, like maybe because she was a woman and was often excluded from things. But then at the end of the day, she was just excluded from things, or like she was just like a loner because she was a loner, not anything to do with her gender. And I like that version better, but it felt like, why bring up these why bring up all this stuff if you're not going to use it?
The entire misogynistic part of this world only exists as a throwaway description line of a random secretarial character.
Yeah, and the journalist. But like,
and the journalist, yeah.
Joel's mom has a job. There's no evidence.
Not many other women to...
There are no other women. So like, there's very little evidence to show that this is true at all.
Wait, it's like the journalist, Melody, Joel's mom. Are they the only named women?
There's the Scottish
Florence,
woman.
And Florence.
I don't think she's named.
And then in Florence.
The Scottish woman?
Or she is named.
Yeah, she's named.
Yeah, maybe
yes, she is.
named.
And the Scottish woman. And then there's like a few other women show up in the form of just random concerned mothers that I don't think.
There are also a couple of named women who are described for Joel's upper crust friend who sucks to ogle.
Oh, yeah. There's like the girlfriends of a couple of his friends.
Sanderson needs to, at this point in his writing career, just read a few romance books because he like cannot write anything that makes me not cringe every fucking time. Like he's there was like a point where she had a short dress on that went to her knees and it like showed off her calves, and like Joel was like getting distracted by her calves. I was like, this man needs to read a romance book so fucking bad.
Not to make everything about
so
the Mormonism.
Weird.
I mean, once again, we have to go back to the Mormonism. I will never get over, I fucking love the scene in Twilight where Edward is overcome with lust for Bella because of her floor-length khaki skirt.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
This might be a good a time as any to bring up a little bit of... There's an interesting quote about the sequel. So this book doesn't have a sequel. It very much ends in a there's meant to be more story way. And a sequel to Rithmatist has been one of those things that pretty much every state of Sanderson, Brandon Sanderson brings it up as, I want to do this, I just don't have time. So it's kind of a constant, like,
Didn't he
eventually
say
get to
he's
it.
going to do it after Atlantis, which he's going to do after the third Mistborn, which means it's going to be like 2032 or 2033.
Something like that. I think it's part of the pile of things. It's part of the pile of things he wants to do before he gets back to Stormlight Archive after Wind and Truth. Whatever. What I'm bringing up is we've talked so far about, with the whole alternate history thing, the poor handling of misogyny, like themes of misogyny and just women in general in the books, the strangeness with the indigenous history thing, which both seem like problems that, kind of like what Taylor was saying with read more romance books, can be solved by just, I guess, more engagement with the like history of those topics, more engagement with other media, basically research. And that's something that Brandon Sanderson has demonstrated he's willing to do on some topics, is do a lot of research. And I want to specifically flag, this is from Coppermind, which is citing the 2014 State of Sanderson, where he's first talking about his desire to do a sequel for Rithmatist, which is titled the Aztlanian. And he basically said he was going to use a lot of real world cultures, including South and Central American cultures such as the Aztecs. And he felt the need that he needed to do a lot of research before he could touch those, so he didn't put his foot in his mouth. And essentially what happened is he spent a lot of time doing a lot of deep dive research, reading history books, doing all of this stuff, and essentially never got around to actually writing the book, and then life got busy and he never did it. So it's clear that Brandon Sanderson acknowledges that there are topics that, kind of like we were talking about last episode, where he can't be an expert in anything, but there's a certain level of care that's required. There's a couple topics where he clearly is willing and understanding of the need for lots of research before to avoid him putting his foot in his mouth and doing that. So it's interesting to kind of see, like, where are the areas he's willing to do that research and not. He clearly has shown repeatedly that he's willing to do that research with a lot of historical topics, not all of them, but a decent number of like history and cultural topics. But it seems like he even flags that in that State of the Sanderson, he actually puts out a call to action, like, hey, if there's any indigenous Americans that are willing to talk to me to get a perspective of before he writes the sequel. So he clearly knows that there are topics that he needs to do research into to make sure he gives a honest and respectful representation of. And women just seem to be a topic he has not done that for yet.
I mean, this is sort of an interesting thing that we'll have to keep track of as we continue reading. And not necessarily his treatment of women, because I'm sure that like that will get better as he gets more and more beta readers. And also, it's worth noting that there are women who think that his handling of women has been good from the start, because like Vin is a relatively three-dimensional character, whether or not we agree with that. But I think it'll be interesting to track this as we move along, as Sanderson, the author, starts to disappear into Sanderson, the production company. Because I think an interesting thing to keep track of is he's going to be able to say no to his editors more, and we're going to see more of his unchecked ideas enter the book as we go further and further on. And then I think we are also going to run into a lot of sort of the rounding off of some of his worst instincts through this production company that's being built. Jack, you probably know this offhand. There's like pages upon pages of production beta readers in the production credits of Wind and Truth, right? It's like between 5 and 10 pages.
I think I brought this up on earlier episodes that I'm excited to kind of see if we can notice when he starts using more beta readers and stuff, because his later Cosmere books, especially the ones in the last 5 years, are it's not just him writing a book. It's a full production. There are alpha readers, beta readers, research teams. He has people on, this is a very, like, I know George R.R. Martin does this too. He has people on staff that are essentially just lore keepers to help him stay consistent with these super complicated magic systems and world building he's done. They become more and more a team effort, like in a big way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wonder what kind of era Sanderson is in at this time, because this year, what we've read, I don't know, maybe, obviously this is all speculation, I feel like the Wheel of Time really knocked him down. You know, as a writer, he's not unestablished in his career, but he's definitely still needing to produce a book a year and needing to continue writing. And I mean, even in the acknowledgments of this, he talks about how he needed to stop writing this book that he started 6 years ago because he needed to do the Wheel of Time. And I don't know, I feel like there was a version of the Rithmatist that got the time it deserved, got the rewrites it deserved, got the revisions it deserved, and was really cool and interesting, and like was really tight. And because I feel like there was a few scenes that could have been combined or didn't need to be altogether, and I feel like we could have fleshed out other scenes a lot more. I just feel like this era, because this is the same problem I had with the Alloy of Law, honestly, it seems like he just doesn't have the time in his life right now, or is willing to put out products that do not match, in my opinion, the Mistborn series, Warbreaker, or The Way of Kings.
Yeah.
That's a great point, and I wonder if we're now gonna get, because now he's done Asterisk, there's the short stories, but now he's essentially done with Wheel of Time, if we're going to see the other end of that. I
hope so, because I'm kind of sick of these books that are like clearly a bit rushed, because I think the Rithmatist could have been so cool. Like, actually, I genuinely believe that.
I'm really interested to see where we're going to sit, because I think we're going to be in this era for just a tad bit longer, because we're going to have to deal with the Infinity Blade book, which I'm actually kind of curious about the ending of the Infinity Blade book, because I remember the ending of the games being wild, and I think it'll be interesting to see what Sanderson does there. But regardless, so look forward to that next month. But I think if we're going to see a moment of like, this is where Sanderson course corrects and sort of find himself again, it's going to be Words of Radiance, because correct me if I'm wrong, Jack, Words of Radiance is still largely considered his best book.
I think personally it's between Words of Radiance and Oathbringer.
Okay.
Oh, because while we were on the trip, Maddie actually finally listened to a couple of our episodes.
Don't do that to your girlfriend. Why?
Okay, it was not me going, please, please, please listen. It was, I was talking about our schedule, like, oh, I have to read this book. And she was like, I keep procrastinating watching an episode. Why don't we she was like, let's download an episode and listen while we're driving around Ireland.
Okay.
So, while I'm dealing with roads that predate America and driving on the wrong side of the road, I'm also listening to my own voice talk about Emperor's Soul and Maddie asking various questions about it, which was a fun experience. But she was asking me like what my favorite and least favorite Brandon Sanderson book are of essentially, because, I have my rankings for what we've done for this podcast, but just everything I've read. And gun to my head, if I had to give an answer on my favorite Brandon Sanderson work, I was having a lot of trouble going between Words of Radiance and Oathbringer.
It's also worth pointing out that Kirk, who very graciously gave us a shout out when we're recording this week on Triple Click, his one more thing was Words of Radiance, and he's like, I just finished Words of Radiance, and I think it's the best thing I've read by him.
It's really good.
Sanderson loves redheads who draw.
It's true.
Wait, no.
That's the first thing when Melody was a redhead and she drew well, I was like, oh, he loves those girls.
A redheaded academic who shirks her other academic responsibilities to be really good at sketching.
I love it.
God damn it.
This is actually Shalon in the Rithmatist, if she was in the Rithmatist world. She also has a bunch of brothers and is from a noble family.
She has a bunch of brothers with a noble family.
Okay. I was just double checking to see
damn
what Brandon Sanderson's wife's hair color is. It is not red.
Oh, we need to talk about this too, though. This book is dedicated to Joel Sanderson, and the main character's name is Joel.
Sure.
And it took me a while, but his son is named Joel. So it's basically he wrote this book where his son's the main character. At the time, his son was born in, I think, 2007. So at the time, his son was 6. Very interesting.
So the Brandon Sanderson self-insert character is the main character's dead dad. That's Sanderson in this book.
So, oh my god, it kind of is, though.
And his son, who's the fan. And it's Graham, you were saying that Joel is not an author insert, is a super fan insert.
Stop.
Who's also his son, who's
weird.
really into arithmetics because of his dad's engagement with it.
I feel like that definitely colored like Joel's like characterization for sure. Was that he had the same name as his son.
That's 2 episodes in a row that we've come up with like an insane revelation right here at the end. Well done, you two.
Oh my god.
Anyway, as Taylor said, there's lots of little scenes, which some of them are fun. Some of them do feel maybe should have been cut in the edit. It does make the pacing, once again, sorry to bring it up again, drawing back to Harry Potter, it does make it feel very Harry Potter-y in the pacing, where there's just lots of long breaks of sections where it's just them kind of existing at school. And some of them I enjoy, some of them are kind of whatever.
I think he has this instinct in his younger audiences to be very chronological.
Maintain the chronologicality.
Maintain the chronologicality, yes. All the Alcatraz books take place over one day, so we're like going hour by hour, and I feel like this book was written with similarly not very long time jumps. We had the morning of that day, and then we go to the afternoon of that day, and then we find out what happens in the evening of that day. Like, we're not really jumping to like important scenes. We're like literally following Joel's life, like, like what he does every day, and sometimes he's not doing exciting stuff. And so that's why I was like, I don't know.
Something that I really wish was here is this takes place over a couple of weeks during summer break. And I think one of like the really important things for if you were going to spend this much time in wizard school, which like is a genre that I have mixed feelings on, but if you're going to spend this much time in wizard school, hit a fucking holiday. Show me some time progressing. Well, I think one of the strengths of a wizard school book is like, we'll skip a month of classes because who gives a shit about that month of classes, and let's do Halloween. Yeah. Halloween is always a fun time in a wizard school book. Let's see how that. I want something like that.
I was about to say the closest we got is the Melee, because that's treated like a holiday sort of, or like a big event, but not really.
I mean, yeah, starting your book off at summer vacation too is also like unhinged in my opinion.
Yeah, like one of the first scenes is his final, for his history final. That there was that one scene at the very beginning where his math teacher accuses him of cheating. That felt like such a wish fulfillment-y scene.
Oh my god, yes.
Like, it was satisfying, but satisfying in the way like reading a story about the guy who had the perfect comeback to some asshole like is.
Oh my god. It was so forced. It didn't feel natural at all. I read that scene. Okay, you can explain what happens in the scene.
Basically, Joel, because he doesn't care about any subject other than arithmetics, he like keeps skipping assignments or whatever, but he gets like perfect scores on all of his math exams. And so the professor is like, I'm convinced you're cheating, because that's the pattern of someone who's cheating. Like, you're not doing your assignments, all this stuff, but then you get perfect answers where you're not showing your work on all these math tests. And so the teacher is basically like, you're going to have to do remedial math because you're definitely cheating. And Joel proves him wrong by right in front of him starting to do all these complex math things, like doing the homework in front of him. And the teacher's like, oh, I don't know how you got the answers to these. And then the professor starts making up questions on the spot, and Joel's like answering them like in his head and drawing a perfect circle, and like he's like a genius of geometry and wastes time. The geometry class is a waste of time for him. And like proves his teacher wrong on the spot about him cheating because he's just so smart in geometry.
That's like
math.
So crazy to me, because that's like, to me, that felt like a conversation that should have happened like month 2 they were together.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't turn in your homework. We need to talk about you not turning in your homework. Oh my god, you're actually a genius at this. Like, how did this conversation never happen?
This is also high school, right? It's not like college where if you're not turning in your assignments, maybe the professor will send you an email being like, hey, just a reminder they're an important part of your grade.
Yeah, this is high school.
This is high school. Like,
God, again, this is the thing that's so inconsistent about everyone's age, because Joel feels older and also much younger than 16. The thing I had to keep constantly reminding myself is Joel is supposed to be the same age as Vin. Think about that.
Joel to me was just Bastille, and so I just like kind of let that happen.
I did keep
13.
forgetting they were 16. I think in my head the entire book I was imagining them as like 12 or 13-year-olds.
I think that's a better book, is if it's like that consistent.
Yeah.
Or like age them up significantly. Like, you either age them down to 12, 13 and like you keep the tone a little bit different, or you age them all the way up to, this is a 21-year-old who's on the second to last year of his undergraduate degree in magic studies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those are your options. And I don't know. This book is this weird compromise in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the tone was not very good.
It felt like making it young adult was like a last minute decision. Like, he came up with this Cosmere book idea and then was like, but actually it's going to be young adult now.
Yeah.
Do we have any other final thoughts on this before we move on to our rankings?
Oh, I just want to briefly go back to the whole like non-magic person thing. I want to address an asterisk we mentioned earlier in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he doesn't have magic, he doesn't get magic. Part of how Rithmatists get magic is there's a religious ceremony on July 4th where if you turned 8 years old the previous year, that July 4th, you are supposed to go through an inception ceremony, which is you walk into this weird chamber, and then like, if you're not meant to be a Rithmatist, nothing happens, you pray a little and you leave. And if you are meant to be a Rithmatist, something happens, which Rithmatists are supposed to keep secret.
What I think is most fascinating about this scene is you have basically found a way to make a Christian First Communion state mandated, which feels extremely Christian. Not necessarily...
Oh, yeah.
I honestly don't know what Mormon baptism and Mormon ceremonies look like. I was raised Roman Catholic, so I'm thinking First Communion. But like, you're basically forming like this very early rite of passage, which you have before your adulthood in the church, which is normally done when you're 16. You do this, and it's like, okay, that feels like a deeply religious American thing to put in, which is weird. Anyway, continue, Jack. Oh, and the religion is called monarchism, right?
Yeah, monarchism. Yeah, because it's all after the monarch from England who discovered Rithmatics is the whole thing.
Gotcha.
But instead of God, they say the master.
Weird.
Which for most of the book I thought was like a pope-like figure, like a head of religion, and then it's like, oh wait, no, that's God.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so what happened is, so you're supposed to become a Rithmatist then, or not. But Joel, for most of the book, has this idea that he missed his chance and like he could have been one but didn't, because Joel's dad died the day before his ceremony. And so Joel was understandably distracted and missed his ceremony, and then had kind of a botched, rushed one later in the year. And so there's this kind of sense by Joel where he's like, I was supposed to be a Rithmatist, but I wasn't because of unfortunate life circumstances. And then Melody figures out that, hey, your ritual was botched. You can just go do it this upcoming July 4th. Like, it's 8 years late, but there's nothing actual, there's no rule that says a dog can't play basketball. Like, there's no rule saying you can't do it later in life. And so, Melody goes and epically debates the deacon, or whatever the name is, the vicar, into letting Joel participate. And then Joel goes do it. And the entire time I'm dreaded. Like, we get to that scene and I'm like, here it is, the scene where Joel becomes magic and is like actually the most powerful specialist magic boy. I was so dreading that scene. He goes in, but then he sees a weird creature in there, which I guess we later learn I'm thinking is some kind of spren, like those bond to people, and that's what make them Rithmatists.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like, it doesn't bond to him or doesn't do what it's supposed to. It just goes away. And Joel is not a Rithmatist. And so on the one hand, he's not a Rithmatist, but also we know that if you're not a Rithmatist, nothing was supposed to happen in that chamber. So there is something up with Joel, where he did see the magic creature you're supposed to see when you become a Rithmatist, but then he wasn't a Rithmatist. And there's a throwaway line near the end of the book where Joel is like witnessing Nalazar and thinking about him and Harding and all this stuff, and like realizes like, oh, there must be multiple ways to get Rithmatist powers.
Yeah.
And so I think the book is clearly setting up that Joel is still going to end up being, end of book 2, Ellen style, Joel becomes the most powerful Rithmatist ever, which I am now dreading and I hope never happens. I was pleasantly surprised that the book ended with Joel never actually becoming a wizard, but still being very helpful and competent throughout the whole story, like still being the main character. That was a refreshing thing to see in a Brandon Sanderson book. I'm sure he's going to become a Rithmatist in the next book.
Yeah.
If it ever comes out.
I mean, it's worth knowing that is probably beyond the scope of this podcast. We will eventually catch up. We're going to, at the current pace, we're going to catch up in 2029 at some point.
That date keeps getting later. I remember when you were saying 2028.
Yes. Well, he's released 2 books this year, or is releasing 2 books this year.
And we read 12 to 14.
Yeah, so he's released Isles of the Emberdark, and then he's releasing Tailored Realities later this year, which is another short story collection. But it's worth considering that we're probably going to catch up in 2029, and when we catch up, we may put the podcast on some sort of hiatus. I don't know. This is more a conversation between the 3 of us than it is for something on there. And like the Rithmatist sequel may never get written, so who knows? Do we want to do our rankings?
Sure.
Sure. Rankings of this year.
For me, this is below Shattered Lens, I think. Yeah, below Shattered Lens, I would say. I didn't dislike it, but I also didn't particularly care for it.
What's it above?
That would make it above for this year. I think that makes it just above Legion for this year.
Interesting.
And like, I didn't hate it. I just was like, I don't find this particularly interesting. I think like the last third is worth reading, but like the first 2/3 are so slow that I was just bored by most of it.
I honestly put this as my number 2 for the year.
Oh, really?
It's
okay.
below the Emperor's Soul and above the Alloy of Law, but I think I have some sort of unnatural hot take of my hatred for the Alloy of Law. I don't think anyone is there with me. So
I don't hate it. I just don't like
bad.
it either. I think it's like perfectly mid Cosmere.
Mine's kind of hard because there's a little bit of a novelness and recency bias going into this, where I'm definitely comparing this pretty strongly to Alcatraz, and I don't think I like the Shattered Lens very much at all, and it's been a while since I read it, so I'm tempted to put it above it, mostly because to my brain it's working in the same space, and it's new, it's fresh, I just read it. And I think I'm going to remember more of what happened in Rithmatist than I remembered what happened in Shattered Lens. I think in terms of what it's below, I think it's definitely below Emperor's Soul. And I don't know where to place it with Alloy of Law. I think, once again, there's a bias going into this where Alloy of Law gets a boost because it's the start to a series that I'm generally positive towards, even if the start was kind of rough. I think maybe I enjoyed the reading of it a little more than I enjoyed the reading of Alloy of Law. Because I think when I was reading Alloy of Law, it was a lot of, I am reading this, and I feel like I am just reading this to find things to talk about on the podcast, compared to Rithmatist, where I actually kind of got into it and was like really like reading it and enjoying myself. So I think for this year, that makes it probably 2 or 3, with just Emperor's Soul, and I think just Emperor's Soul above it.
That's
all the stuff we read this year.
All right, then.
Oh, sorry. And of course, Harry goes above it, number 1 spot for this year.
Shut the fuck up.
Our runaway favorite.
Oh God,
that I'm sure you all remember. I'm about to say, I'm sure you all remember in vivid detail.
That episode has done weirdly well. That episode is like doing a way better than our Alloy of Law episode.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. On my overall rankings, of all time, the Rithmatist gets a number 7. So, not bad.
Solidly middle of the pack.
Yeah, out of 14. Actually, exactly middle. Because this doesn't include any of the short stories.
Yeah.
For my overall ranking.
Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. We'll be back next month with River of Souls and Infinity Blade Redemption. I do believe Sophie is coming back. She already asked me for the Infinity Blade books. And
perfect.
Are we playing 2 and 3, which I think she and I will be playing 2 and 3 again. But yeah, we'll see y'all next month. Until then, grab a book and hit the beach.
Grab a book and hit the beach.
A Grain of Sanderson is created by Graham Gillman, Taylor Lane, and Jack McLaughlan. I edit and produce the show. Our logo is by our very talented friend Ven Busby. Our theme music is Goodnight Kiss by Too Mellow off the album Midnight Broadcasts. You can find their work at twomellow.net, that's the number 2, MELLO, and twomellow at bandcamp.com. If you'd like to support the Beachcombers further, you can do that in the following ways. First, tell your friends about this podcast. Sharing the pod in a Discord, writing a thoughtful post on social media, or otherwise telling your friends really helps us out. You can follow us on social media. Taylor works very hard on our Instagram, or buy a book from our bookshop, of which we see a small cut. Finally, if you'd like to contribute to us most directly, we have a Patreon. Those links are in the episode description. Questions, critiques, or encouragement? Please write us an email at agrainofsanderson@gmail.com, or join our Discord. A link is available in our show notes. Thank you so much for listening.